And welcome back to Capitol Tonight. So not so long ago, the expectation was that the 2010 race for governor would be fairly predictable. Andrew Cuomo would, of course, sail to victory in November and into the executive mansion. It all seemed so certain that he would handily defeat Rick Blasio to get there. But a controversial character called Carl Paladino has thrown a wrench in all of this works, making this year's election all the more fascinating. And here to add their 2 cents to the mix are our very own insiders. They are political analysts who join us each week to share their unique perspective on the week's news. Now, Dave Catalfamo is joining us from Albany this evening. He is a former communications director to former Governor George Pataki. He's now with Capital Public Strategies. And joining us from New York City is Richard Fife. He is the president of RJF Communications and is Governor Patterson's former campaign manager. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks. Okay, so actually I'd like to start with you because your former boss, with whom you still have a relationship and speak to and speak for, was called by Carl Paladino a degenerate idiot, which I think really sets the tone for exactly what we want to be speaking about here.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously an unfortunate comment, and I mean, I think that Carl has shown himself to be very much outside the box, but very much outside the box seems to be speaking to voters who are very much tired of what they've seen out of Albany, and as a result, I think they're going to be very tired of Andrew Cuomo.
Outside the box, you're laughing. I hear you laughing, Richard.
I think outside the box, what he's shown is he's unfit for office. You know, this is a time we face serious problems, and he's not a serious candidate. He hasn't learned the difference between running in a primary and running in a general election. Even Christine O'Donnell down in Delaware has understood that. But instead, he's running a high school, using his high school humor to make attacks.
No, but the problem is that, Richie, is that the reality is that voters have heard the same thing over and over and over again from establishment candidates, and they don't believe it anymore. So they actually are gravitating to somebody who's actually speaking very bluntly to them, speaking very directly to them, and actually willing to take on issues that frankly haven't been taken on head on in the past.
Well, that's all well and good, except that... Go ahead, Richard.
Something that's embarrassing and crazy is not is business as usual in Albany, and people are tired of it. People want serious solutions, and that's what Andrew Cuomo's offering.
Well, serious, but in order to be serious, you need to believe it. And the fact of the matter is that they don't necessarily believe that Andrew Cuomo's solutions, that he's serious about them to begin with, or that anybody in Albany is serious about them. They've heard this stuff from Eliot Spitzer. They've heard it from the Democrats in Albany, and the fact of the matter is they're sick of it. They're sick of it in Washington. They're sick of it in Albany, and I think that they're rejecting it, and they're going to reject it resoundingly.
Okay, wait, let me just time out here for a second, and let's just take a look at some of what we've been looking at, actually, in this race to date, which is really 1 week old. That's what we're talking about in the general election, 1 week old. I want to show some flyers that we've seen here that have come out of the Paladino camp. This is Andrew Cuomo in the shower, cleaning off mud that has been thrown at him by the Working Families Party, which he accepted the Working Families Party nod. Now, Richie, the Working Families Party, actually agreed to endorse his whole platform, but nevertheless, the Working Families Party has had some problems. Could this come back to haunt him?
Well, I don't think so, because what he's put together is a broad range of supporters, including the Working Families Party, including Republicans, and what it shows is he's bringing a coalition not just to elect a governor, but to change government, and that's what's needed.
I'd love to see the Working Families Party questionnaire that they sent out to all the Senate Democrat candidates and all the candidates who've answered it in the past. The fact of the matter is that Working Family Party is not changing their stripes overnight. This is the party that is going to, take us down a road of more union, higher costs, higher taxes. Nobody for a second in Albany or out of Albany, frankly, believe that the Working Family Party is really endorsing a reasonable program of economic relief for middle-class taxpayers, for bringing jobs and job creation back to the state. No one in their right mind believes that. Whether or not they change their press release for a minute for the benefit of endorsing Andrew Cuomo or not, the reality is Carl Paladino is calling that out, and people saying, Carl, you're right. Now, we may argue about the way that he's done it or whether or not we think it is fitting, but the fact of the matter is he's hit a nerve, and that nerve is very valid.
Richie?
He's not hitting a nerve because he hasn't shown himself to be capable of being governor. And that's the first test there is of any candidate. What he's shown is he can appeal to a small segment of the primary electorate, and he was successful at that.
Okay, but wait a minute. If that's the case, then how come the Rasmussen poll has him just 16 points behind Andrew Cuomo? I mean, that's not such a bad spread for a guy who came out of nowhere 6 weeks ago.
Look, I think.
Well, I think there are two problems with the Rasmussen poll. One is their methodology, which is kind of computer generated, not with people, it's just push button, and the sample they use, which is a problem. But just as important is they poll too soon and before the race is settled. A poll is just a snapshot of what's going on, and this snapshot was too close to the election before people really focused on who he is and what's going on. In 2002, we polled for Carl McCall at a similar time and showed the race that closed with it in 9 points. But what happened was it was before the money advantage had taken effect. It was before people had focused on the race. And while the poll was correct, it wasn't indicative of what kind of race it was.
Yeah, I think the poll's correct, and the poll's going to get closer. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you look across America, I mean, Chris Christie. I mean, Chris Christie it was, be a very popular incumbent in New Jersey, and he did it with a lot of straight talk. He got,
but not with flyers that showed a guy in the shower.
But he got killed by the.
That's the big difference. Chris Christie gave you straight talk. He was direct. He was negative, but he wasn't childish. And Carl Palladino is being childish, and that's what's going to save his campaign.
I don't think it's childish today to talk about a team of economic advisors and point out the fact that he's talking about cutting the actual tax rate as opposed to Attorney General Cuomo, who's talking about cutting the rate of the growth of taxes. So, I mean, pointing out real differences in policy, which is exactly what Carl needs to do now going forward. He needs to put some substance around this platform and around the energy that he's harnessed. And if he starts doing that, I think he's going to be able to continue to resonate with his message.
Well, and that's actually what George Pataki said. I mean, now let's also say that the Rasmussen poll did not include Rick Lazio.
Right.
What it did include was just two guys in a head-to-head, and we have not yet heard from Rick Lazio whether he will be staying in the race on the conservative line.
Yep.
Let's also, let me ask you this. What do you think the effect of having Carl Palladino at the top of the ticket will have on the Senate races that battle for control of the Senate?
Two things. One is that, Rick Lazio is an honorable guy. He's always done the right thing for this party. He's always stepped up when he's asked to. He stepped up to run against Hillary Clinton when his party asked him to. He stepped up to run against the very popular, very well-funded incumbent in Attorney General Cuomo. I think he should, and I think he will not choose to run this race because I think that Carl Palladino needs a conservative line.
I'm sorry,
to
wait,
run.
are you speaking for George Pataki?
No, I'm speaking for me. Yeah,
okay,
just for me.
checking,
Absolutely.
just checking.
Yeah, and can make that clear. I think he should step aside, and I hope he does, because I think it's the right thing for our party. But further than that, I think that Carl, again, if he stays on the path of giving substance to and modulating his voice and his attacks, I think will have a tremendous effect on pulling out Republican voters in a year when Democrats will not come out and vote, helping to take the Senate majority back, frankly, and helping to win some of the congressional seats that are at play.
Richie, do you think that it's actually, you've seen a lot of Democrats try to force Republican candidates in these Senate races in particular to say that they disavow Carl Palladino and his statements, which they characterize as racist, anti-Semitic, and misogynist?
Right, and I think that's become a real problem for the Republican candidates, starting in the statewide races from Attorney General and Controller down to the state Senate. The Republican candidates want no part of Carl Palladino. They now put in between of angering this base that they say is going to come out, or siding with him, which is losing the middle. So the Republican candidates for state Senate on up are put in a bad position and are waffling and hiding.
What's hysterical, though, is that the top of your ticket won't even come out and stand behind the African Americans who came out and basically had negative things to say about Carl, the Jewish leaders who came out. I haven't heard the Attorney General yet say, well, you know what, they're right. At every chance he has, he basically sidesteps it and doesn't take it on directly. So I don't know how we're going to be critical of these other folks who are, evaluating, waiting to see how Carl's campaign plays out, when the Attorney General himself, the opponent, who basically trots these surrogates out, doesn't even stand behind them.
Okay, so, Richie, true. Where is Andrew Cuomo, and should he be engaging with Carl Palladino? We saw the mistake. Rick Lazio did not debate, and we saw what happened to him.
Well, I think he will be engaging. I think, Attorney General Cuomo came out when he started his campaign with a 240-page book. He's outlined his positions. He's traveled the state, and I think as the campaign moves into this final 4 or 5 weeks, you'll also see him engage his opponents. I think he's run a great campaign. Yeah,
but should he be saying Carl Palladino is inappropriate, Carl Palladino is unfit? We are hearing from a lot of Democrats all over the state.
I think he's doing what he should be doing, was outlining a positive vision for moving the state forward, building a coalition to change the government, and that's what's is going to move the state forward.
But it's exactly what voters are tired of, which is they want somebody to look them in the eye and tell them straight what it is they think of him. If the Attorney General doesn't think that Carl Palladino is not fit, he should say it. If he thinks that his emails are racist, he should just say it. The fact of the matter is that Carl Palladino, like him or not, stands in front of the camera and says, this is what I think.
Okay, let me ask you, in parting, what you think. Is it possible for Carl Palladino to win?
I was shocked, candidly, on primary night. I mean, I was a Rick Lazio supporter and candidly thought that, you know, that Rick would win and be close. So, yeah, I think anything's possible.
Richie, last word to you.
I wasn't shocked that he won the primary, but he's not going to win the general election because he's not fit for office.
Well, we shall see. I'm sure we're going to be revisiting both of you guys. I want to thank you very much, Dave Catalfamo and Richard Fife. Thanks so much for joining me from New York City, from Albany. Thanks.
Thank you.